we have a guy who's a professed Satanist in our faculty.
Okay. Welcome to another episode as part of our collaboration between the UP Drama Department and the Transformation Office. Today we will be talking to the UP Theology, or rather the Faculty of Theology and Religion, about religion and cultural diversity. So firstly, good afternoon, Lance. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. I'm doing very well, thank you.
That's great to hear. So I understand that Christianity is the main belief system that is taught in our university. So how has the approach to teaching about the Bible adapted throughout the years in regards to our socio-political climate?
If I look at our Faculty of Theology, the parameters of what theology is considered to be as a science hasn't changed that much. We still are very concerned about Greek and Hebrew and exegesis, the analysis of the Bible, and we focus a lot of effort into getting people to understand the complexity of what the Bible looks like. It's up to individual lecturers then to try and contextualize it, try and get the student to be able to apply the way in which they read the Bible into society. But there isn't always the immersed context in which they can do the analysis. We try to ask, what is the relevance of religion in the context of post-94 society? Now, I use post-94 very intentionally. I'm of the belief that we can't be post-apartheid until our policies and our structures change. The narrative for apartheid was birthed out of our faculty. We created the theology that told black people that they are inferior to white people, and that was a theological paradigm, obviously amplified by other disciplines. So if we continue to perpetuate the same method in which we teach theology, my understanding is that we continue to have the same results. If we have architectural students designing the same apartheid city and been taught by lecturers that were trained under the apartheid model, and we regard that as education, the end result will be a city that continues to exclude the black child. And so how do we ask those questions theologically in a space in which we find ourselves? And so currently we are trying to immerse our students as best we can into some of these contexts on where the ghosts of apartheid still perpetuate itself, and then ask them to theologize out of that. But very often that's a postgraduate level.
Yes.
And so my concern is in undergrad that we continue to perpetuate a model that doesn't really get the student to think that creatively around the complexity of what the apartheid city looks like.
Yes.
And so how do we teach a theological method that moves past the language, the analysis, into something that is life-giving for all people in South Africa?
Yes, that does make sense. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I think it is important to contextualize our studies and what we are trying to do in the world within what we're studying here at the university. So now, as a faculty, you have a space for people who are now doubting their faith. Is there space for people like that?
So we have a guy who's a professed Satanist in our faculty.
Okay.
we advanced from a Faculty of Theology to a Faculty of Theology and Religion, because we have to ask the question, do all religions convey an element of truth? What's the basic value your religion is trying to give? What's the basic value your culture is trying to hold? And does that value still hold sway? Is this mode of thinking breaking down the person, or is it building up? Is it creating scapegoats? Is it creating a platonic unity where only people look a certain way, sound a certain way, believe a certain way, and they are the only real people? That has no space. Well, I believe that shouldn't have no space in a university or in any kind of religious model. The end goal is, if we are a religion only teaching a specific type of theology, a specific religion, then that should not be. That's a seminary. We want to be an academic institution. We have to be able to bring in the atheists. We have to be able to bring in the mode of education that gets people to question everything. When I taught at the theology at the seminary, I always said your granny's faith is going to stay at the door. Here we're going to discover the God who is. We can ask any question. We can destroy any mode of who God is, because the images of God is exactly that. They're idols, and idols need to be destroyed. How do we have an encounter that takes us further? And so for me, theological education is about how do we ask the difficult questions with an intention of belief and a mode of then saying, this is the the mode in which I am willing to sacrifice everything I am in order to make this a reality.
Yes, I really appreciate your progressive take on religion. I think it's useful and very accepting to everybody who might have encountered religion in their life, which is most of us. In the context of now the Faculty of Theology now being changed to the Faculty of Theology and Religion, which is now inclusive to all religions, will there be lecturers or professionals coming in to teach about other religions?
So I think that's the complexity of how we do our. Very often academics view their own discipline. We all believe we're right. And so to create space for other people could mean that somebody else has value in the other religion. And that in itself could almost chase the Christians away from the faculty.
Okay.
We speak Faculty of Theology and Religion, but we have to always ask ourselves the question, is there an intention to be more inclusive, or are we using other people just to build our own profile? So currently in the Faculty of Theology, they still self-identify as a Reformed theology faculty. I'm a Catholic. Automatically, I fit outside of the Reformed definition. So when I sit in meetings, I'm told this is a Protestant Reformed faculty, which subliminally means that I have no space there. And so if among Christians we have this same prejudice and bias, I find it very complicated or very complex to invite a Muslim into that. You're good enough for one module, for one lecture, but then you leave.
Okay.
Transformation is around an intention by all people part of that.
Yes.
If we want to be authentic to the understanding that this is a Faculty of Theology and Religion, then we have to bring in other religious partners.
We do.
But when the requirements to become a lecturer in the faculty is coded before the interview even happens, there is no way people will be able to comply with what the job spec is. This is why I say compliance is very often a tick box, but who created the boxes? And are those boxes about transformation or an impression of transformation guised as perpetuation of prejudice? And so what are we actually trying to effect when we make those transformations? Do we want to continue to hold the space for ourselves, or are we intentional about inviting other ideas in, other people in? So it's an institutional question that we have to ask. Who frames the questions? Who frames the tick boxes? And who frames who will be allowed into the space and who will not be accepted into those spaces? Because people that bring in something that's going to destroy the context and how I see or how I self-identify will often not be part of that conversation. And so for me, naming is just words. It's the spirit, the intention that lies behind the language needs to be interrogated.
So we're not there yet.
No.
So considering you're now Satanist student who's doing their postgrad in your faculty, who is helping him? Who's now qualified enough to do that?
So for me, the premises of religion is almost always the same. There is a professor that's journeying with him and making sure that the fundamentals of what is required of a PhD is adhered to. So a PhD is quite generic. You have a very set template, and the content itself gets shaped by the person doing the PhD. This person has somebody who's very open to understanding other religions and allows the Satanist to be able to explore that.
Okay.
But in private conversations, sometimes you wonder whether the Satanist doing his PhD is not challenging his promoter.
Okay.
Because Christians tend to be very conservative. The word Satan is an emotive response.
Yes.
And so the question is, are we doing it to look good? Or are we actually helping this person through the process? I don't see any kind of accompaniment to the young person that they would need to go through the process.
Okay.
It is just following the system. You come up with your own conclusions, but the assistance that a person like that would need in order to delve into this new component of self-identity, to build this career going forward, I am doubtful of our faculty can hold. All we're doing is producing a researcher.
Okay.
And if that's the end goal of what Faculty of Theology and Religion is, yes, we are assisting him as a generic base, but are we exploring his own development as a young person into the space that he has chosen? And I don't think anybody, including myself, has the capacity to be able to journey with him.
Okay. So my final question to you is, how has the Transformation Office supported you as a faculty?
Well, because I do mostly research in very vulnerable communities, and the question is always, what does theological education look like going forward? I think the complexity for us would come in with how SAQA would understand what religion looks like.
Okay.
And we have to ask who created those parameters.
Yes.
And so the Transformation Office tries to stick within the parameters that is external to the university. What would that look like? So to bring in black lecturers doesn't make a difference. We can perpetuate the apartheid paradigm. What does real transformation look like?
Yes.
How do we measure the effectivity of the impact of what our students do post curriculum? More analysis needs to go in there. To speak about transformation as a tick box exercise doesn't bring about transformation.
Definitely.
And so how do we move transformation beyond tick boxes? How do we move transformation into an intention that is clearly defined as a university intention
Yes.
in order to make the university post-apartheid? And I struggle still to see that we have that vision. That are we still just an educational institution? As baptism certificates, your degree becomes a baptism certificate into an institution?
Yes.
Or is it a symbol that you are now able to think? And I think we have extraordinary parameters around us that prevents us from being able to do that.
Okay, I understand that. And I think what I'm understanding from what you said, to reiterate, is that we need this conversation to happen. We need communication. And that's why we're very grateful that you were able to spend a few minutes here with us talking about religion and cultural diversity here at the University of Pretoria. And we really appreciate your time. Thank you, Lance.
Thank you very much. Thanks.